69th BFI London Film Festival has been incredible. What a great lineup it was this year, a great trailer too, I might add. Loved the use of the song Still Blue by Iona Lee. Quite enjoyed listening to that every day. And at the festival itself, I saw 19 films this year. I really went for it and I'm so glad I did. There are some real gems in here and some of my favourite films of the year too. I managed to visit almost every cinema that took part. I did go to one red carpet gala and I also took my camera and did a bit of a B-roll walk, just to keep things interesting. There is so much to talk about. I'm going to try and touch on pretty much every film I saw, let you know when they're coming out. A lot of them are getting a release fairly soon, which is quite exciting. I also felt a strong urge to rewatch some of the films in here, which is quite rare for me. But first, let's talk about the festival itself, which started in 1957 with its first ever opening film, Kurosawa's Throne of Blood. And it's been referred to as a festival of festivals because it takes place after the majority of the heavy hitters in the festival landscape, and tends to feature a lot of big names from Cannes, Venice, Berlin, Toronto. But unlike Cannes and Venice, London is open to the public and it prides itself on that fact. Now, I've not been to Cannes or Venice, but I can only imagine the high-profile sheen of those festivals will feel different to London because London does feel accessible and more like a celebration than a presentation. And I had an absolute blast at this festival, and I felt like the crowds around me did too. It's a very easy festival to go to once you get past that organising and scheduling of the tickets, that is. The festival did also make me realise that watching a film mid-morning is perhaps the best way to start the day. Taking a seat amongst a sea of coffees and letterbox profiles at 10:30 in the morning to see something new and exciting was kind of wonderful. It's so nice to watch a film amongst fans, and it's a great experience to watch a film with a sold-out, packed audience. I really do think an audience can transform a film's experience, and I even have a video in the pipeline about why you should watch films at the cinema. And the 2 weeks of this festival absolutely cemented that community spirit and the feeling that really does elevate the experience of seeing a film at the cinema. I love seeing someone sit down next to me with a zip-up plastic wallet of festival scheduling and programs. This festival just had such a warm, welcoming atmosphere to me, and much more so than my regular cinema trips. One thing I do want to mention before I talk about the films is festival fatigue, which I was a little bit nervous about this year. I watch a lot of films, and oftentimes when new releases come out on a Friday or a Saturday, I will do double, even triple bills to catch all the new stuff, so I'm used to film marathons. And in fact, I love doing it. But a festival is different because it's a compilation of some of the best films of the year or the year coming up. And they are often more hard-hitting with their themes and ideas, and they are films that usually go on to win the awards. They cover a far-reaching amount of subjects. They rarely fall into the Hollywood blockbuster category, and the cast and crew are often present to delve in and discuss the ideas of the themes in person. There's too much to get excited about, and going immediately into another great film can actually get a bit exhausting. It's too much of a good thing. The beauty of a great film is that it lingers, and maybe even shifts your perspective of the world, and who doesn't love a good mull on a film that strikes something within you? And I do think festivals don't give you that time, and I've always been slightly skeptical of festival reviews because of this. You may feel different, but I need time to think on films, which is probably why this video took so long. Having said that, I completely threw myself into the festival this year, averaging 3 films a day for 9 days straight, and there was only one film I think where I really felt the fatigue truly get to me. So I think I did pretty well, but enough of my rambling. Let's talk about the films. And I'm not going to go in depth on a lot of them because I want to do proper reviews when some of these come out. So I'm going to try and touch on everything, even if just briefly. I didn't manage to see everything that I wanted to, but I have since seen a lot of those films that I missed out. If you are interested, you can check my letterbox for some small sentiments on a few of them. But my first day one film was Exit 8. This was such a great start. It's based on the game of the same name, which I did play in advance of the screening, and I'm so glad I did. And I actually recommend you do the same if you want to. It's not required, but this is a film that feels like a memory. It's extremely faithful to the game, and the game offers a really solid foundation for its concept to grow in the film. However, unlike the game, there is a much more fleshed out story here. The basic premise is a man is stuck in a Tokyo subway station in an endless loop. But each time he enters the loop, there may be an anomaly. Something may have changed. And just like the characters, you start to frantically scan the room or the frame for something that's not right. And it's because of this mundane mantra begins to start. You start checking the door, the posters, the vents, the tiles, the lights. Everything starts to become a process every few minutes. And it's a great way to put the audience into a story. And this method is so much more engaging and interesting than what most video game adaptations strive for. I think this film does a great job at bridging the gap between a playable experience and something that feels interactive. I think you can certainly feel part of this film. And it's just a lot of fun. Even though it's not particularly scary, there are some good jumps in here that work especially well in the context of the premise. I think it's a great premise, a great delivery of that premise, and it's just a straightforward 95-minute package. And it's fun to watch with an audience too, as different pockets around the room will notice different anomalies first. Then we had the surprise film, very early on in the festival this time, which was Tuna. There isn't a trailer for this one yet, so you've got this nice visual. It's the only thing I could find on the internet. And it's a film that's not about the fish, but about a piano tuner played by Leo Woodall and features Dustin Hoffman and Javiana Rose Liu. And this is a Foley artist's dream. It's a film that's told and expressed through its sound design. It's tense, well-paced, and it packs a ton of heart as well. Its editing rhythms are really satisfying, and even though its central story isn't all that unique or necessarily interesting, its methods of telling you the story are though. Think about Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes. You remember those slow motion narrated sequences? Well, remove those and replace them with clever sound design and snappy editing. Similar to something you'd find in an Edgar Wright film, but purely sound focused. There is so much here that gives this film a little extra kick, and I ended up completely loving it. I'm really looking forward to the release of this one, and I'm going to talk more about it then. This is a perfect example of a fantastic surprise film at a festival. Keep your eyes and ears peeled for this one. Then I saw Lurker. I've been hearing a bit of buzz around this one, so I was quite excited to see it. This is from first-time director Alex Russell. It's about an obsessed fan that weaves their way into an artist's inner circle. It's got great use of camcorder, as you can probably see from the poster. It's about people that are fascinatingly repulsive. It's an ugly film filled with performative anxiety. It's uncomfortable, I do think regrettably relatable in moments. I think this film does a great job at drawing a line in the sand and then stepping over it. I wasn't in love with its final moments, but I really liked what it was clawing at. There is something about the desperation in this film that's oddly enduring. It's quite funny at times as well. It really pushes you away, but you can't stop staring at it. It's a thoroughly toxic look at the inner workings of an obsessed mind, and I think it captures that feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when you realize what's happening. I think it does that feeling very well. But this is far from a flawless film. I think it does start to struggle in its third act. I think it's still very much worth the ride. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do next, because this is still a great watch. And then the first sort of big gala film I saw was J. Kelly. This is Noah Baumbach's latest film. It's going to hit Netflix on the 5th of December, and it's had a bit of a mixed reception so far. It's a film about a famous actor that is reflecting on his life and going on a journey of sorts. That sounds fairly vague, and that's because the film is kind of vague in its approach. And the big positive of this film is that George Clooney is great. He chews up the script here, but the film is a little bit shallow and a bit misguided for me, kind of like a superficial Christmas Carol. It's very meta, which is something I'm usually really drawn to. I also love films about films and making films, but this does feel a bit too Oscar-driven for me. I do think that could also be a bit of a deliberate meta choice. The film's a bit self-centered, and yes, I think that's also what it's mining at. I don't think it really works as intended. It meanders, but not really in an interesting way. Not for me, at least. Adam Sandler, I do think, is the best part about this film, and I think his character's journey is much more interesting than Jay's, but we don't really spend enough time with him. The film feels very artificial, but in a way that doesn't enhance the story. It's trying to scrape away the artifice of a life on camera, merging scenes and memories, but those scenes and memories are just not that interesting to watch. I do like a lot of the elements of the script here, so there are a few brilliant flourishes. As a whole, this ended up lacking a bit for me. I think if you're a fan of the people involved, this is worth checking out, but I did want something different out of this. And maybe that's just me. But then, changing the pace up a bit, I saw Love+War, which is sadly the only documentary I managed to see at the festival, but it's one that I do highly recommend. It's about American photojournalist Lindsay Addario. This is from directors Chai Vasarely and Jimmy Chin, who also did Free Solo. It's a film that reflects on the life of a photojournalist, with the main focus on Ukraine. It's got great juxtaposition on life at home and in a war zone, with the sentiment being you always carry the other whilst present in one. And I think this really hits home the idea that there is so much going on in the world that we are oblivious to. We do so much carrying on, we never stop to think about what's actually happening. For a world that's so well connected, we have all become very good at staying inside our own bubbles, which means we don't always question what's going on. And I think this film is a pretty urgent reminder of what's actually happening out there. As a documentary, it can feel a little conventional, but a lot of its subject matter and especially its photos do speak for themselves. And I think its frankly candid approach is pretty eye-opening. So definitely check this one out. But next I saw Hamnet. I have been anticipating this for a while. I've not read the book, but I have seen the stage show. I saw it in the West End a couple of years ago, and I really liked it, and that final scene has stayed with me since. Hamlet is one of my favorite pieces of theatre, I might add, and I absolutely adore the Kenneth Branagh film version as well. So it's fair to say I already have quite a lot of stock in this, but I think what's important is that even if you're not a fan of Shakespeare and you've not read Hamnet the novel, there is something universal here that will hit hard. And they do it justice. I'm going to save a lot of my more in-depth thoughts for a video because I want to talk about it in January when this comes out properly, but I can confirm everyone's suspicions that yes, Jessie Buckley will probably win the Oscar for her performance here. The final few scenes of this film are some of the best of the year. It's a very elegant, simple, but powerful film. It has a slow start, but it builds towards that incredible final act, and I found it utterly captivating. Its cinematography is gorgeous, and it's just a film that is content to observe its characters. There is a lot of delicate touches here that all contribute to something that feels real. There was a lot of sobbing in the screening I saw this, and I should add, out of all the films I saw at the festival, this is the only film which didn't have a cast and crew present at that during its credits it got so many extra applause and cheers, and it's no surprise that this went on to win the audience award at the festival. This one is certainly special. This ended up being quite a heavy day for me as I then saw H is for Hawk, Philippa Lothrop's new film starring Claire Foy, which is based on the true story and memoir of Helen MacDonald, who finds solace in her friendship with a hawk. I wasn't expected to be so moved by this. Maybe it's because I saw Hamnet before, and that has a habit of happening at festivals. I think certain films' themes and emotions do start to bleed into other films, and I think in that regard they can prime or unprime you for what you're watching next. But I loved what this film in particular built towards. I don't know if I loved the journey of the film. I think there are some cracks in here. The film circles grief and aims for a catharsis that I do think is earned. It's tender, but I think it could have gone a bit deeper. Claire Foy and Brendan Gleeson are a joy to watch though, and the shots of the hawk flying are just stunning. There is a lot of great choices in the cinematography actually. There's a lot of interesting parallels going on. It's a very British film. A lot of it's filmed in Cambridge actually. It's hard when watching this not to put yourself in her shoes, as grief is something we all go through. So this one does get a thumbs up from me, but not quite emphatically as some of the other films I saw at the festival. Okay, I'm trying not to go too fast through these because there is a lot to get through, but this is an important one. It was just an accident. This is the Cannes Palme d'Or winner. What a film it is. It's devastating yet hilarious. I rarely see a film that has such a strong handle on its tonal shifts, and it builds to an exceptionally measured final scene. There was so many moments in this film where you could hear a pin drop in the cinema. The film is a constant spiral. It does have some moments of levity, but you're never really allowed to forget the trauma beneath it all. Its sinister nature is always bubbling just below the surface. Its performances are all brilliant, and it left me in a state of shock when it finished. I said at the beginning I had a strong urge to rewatch some of these. This is at the top of the list. It's a must watch. It has a masterful screenplay, and I'm not going to tell you anything about the plot because you should just go in blind to this. It's stressful, urgent, and a reckoning of our times at a fundamental level. This was a top 4 of the festival for me. Back on the slightly lighter side of things, I saw The Mastermind. This is Kelly Reichardt's post-heist film, and it's sad to say this didn't really click with me. This is the film where fatigue got to me, I think, so I've added this to my rewatch list as well because every element on display was perfect for me. I just could not engage with the pacing of this film. It kind of threw me, and sometimes that just happens. I think it meandered too much for the moment in time of which I saw it, which happened to be straight after it was just an accident. I'm sad it was this film because I really like Josh O'Connor, and there is brilliant filmmaking at work in this, but I have to be honest when I say I didn't connect with it. But its story of a man coming undone through his own hubris is so well handled here. It flirts with so many different genres, but it's more focused on what happens after the heist. It's a fascinating character study, and if that sounds promising to you, definitely seek it out. I know I need to give it another shot. But moving on to Is This Thing On? And for me, this is Bradley Cooper's best film. I struggled with A Star Is Born, and even more so with Maestro. This, however, is a much more endearing and grounded piece of work. Its beating heart feels like it's on display. The problem with those other films, especially Maestro, is the sheer amount of artifice on its surface. You have to wade through a lot to find something to cling on to, and this film is restrained and approachable in a way that I've not seen from Bradley Cooper before. Partly because Will Arnett and Laura Dern are just endlessly watchable, but its story just works. It's based off comedian John Bishop, so you may already know the story going into this, but it's funny, and it goes places I didn't expect. I quite enjoyed this one, and I do think it's worth checking out. Another big film for me of this festival was Rose of Nevada. This is from director Mark Jenkin, who shoots his films on 16mm. They feel so raw and earthy, and wow, do they look incredible. For those that have seen Eddie's Main, you know what I'm talking about, and Rose of Nevada is no exception. This is easily the best looking film I saw at the festival. It's one of the best looking films I've seen this year. The textures that you feel through the grain is astonishing. It's a beautiful grit. The film itself is eerie, distant, and it feels like a time capsule that's been dug up. It's like you've woken up from a dream and you can't quite remember the specifics of when or where or who you are. It's weathered and simply mesmerizing, and I'm still not exactly sure what happens in it. But when this comes out next year, please do seek it out. Right. The Testament of Anne Lee was one of my most anticipated projects of the year. This one is written and directed by Mona Fastful, with a writing credit also going to Brady Corbet. Yes, this is from the team that brought us The Brutalist just last year. And even though the visuals may feel familiar, they're still completely stunning, that is. The tone and story here are markedly different. This film is about divine vibrations and obsessive convulsions. It's about the Shakers, led by Mother Anne in the late 1700s. Amanda Seyfried is extremely compelling here. She gives a very dedicated and physically driven performance, as do a lot of the cast. It's a bewildering film. It features many musical moments, not quite enough to be called a musical in my eyes, as some have claimed, but there's still enough to keep things interesting. The journey has a true sense of scale to it. It can get overwhelming at times. The hysteria is palpable, the film's energy is feverish, and it's just so alive. There's a lot of feelings to soak up in this one, and even though it took me at least the first act to fully engage with its rhythm, I was converted by the time we hit the third. No Other Choice is the latest from Park Chan-wook, offering some razor-sharp social commentary. It's another fascinatingly twisted film that is so incredibly inventive, with not just its story but its visuals too. There is so many concentrated dissolves in this, and like his other films, every idea is thrown at the screen. It feels like no stone is left unturned. The tone is masterfully balanced, with each scene constantly morphing into something it couldn't possibly achieved a few minutes before. I truly had no idea where some of this was going, and you're not going to get a plot synopsis out of me because the element of surprise in this is half the fun. I should say not every idea worked for me though. This is definitely more is more filmmaking. I would have liked certain sequences to showcase a bit more restraint, and I don't think it quite hits the highs of, say, The Handmaiden. But it's still one of the funniest films I saw at the festival, with a fantastic central performance from Lee Byung-hun, who's having quite the year after both Squid Game and K-pop Demon Hunters. This film is just exciting, interesting filmmaking at its best. Lots of risks and lots of rewards. Next is one of the more straightforward films I saw at this festival, Rental Family. Quite the opposite to No Other Choice. It's also one that I managed to get tickets to the gala for, and to briefly touch on the atmosphere. I do understand now why films often get higher ratings, especially from fans at early screenings, because the energy in the room for this was amazing. It's hard not to get swept up in it all. And even though I think the film has some issues, I still think it's pretty good. Brendan Fraser is the lead here, and he gives a very heartfelt performance. In fact, it's a very heartfelt script. It has a lot of ethical dilemmas it tries to navigate, and I think it gets to the heart of some better than others. But it's a film that just makes you smile. It's all about connection, and the film looks specifically at the idea of transactional connection, renting a family member for the day. There is a loneliness to this film that's quite striking. I often like films to go deeper than they end up going because I do think this film plays it a little safe, but there's a lot to like here. I think the Oscar hype has died down a bit because there was one point this year where this was going to be one of the big hitters, and I don't really see this making the Best Picture lineup, but I think a lot of people will still connect with this. And then I saw The Voice of Hind, Rajab. This is a very straightforward film that lets its story breathe, but not the audience. There is no flourishes to the filmmaking here. It gives you the story in as accurate representation as possible. It is a very urgent and important film for right now. It is a dramatization of real events that took place in Gaza in January of 2024, and it uses the real voice of Hind, which I didn't know going into this. This is devastating. Please do take the time to watch this. This is a tough but important watch. Blue Moon is everything I wanted it to be. Richard Linklater and Ethan Hawke team up again for a story set on the opening night of Oklahoma. Ethan Hawke plays Lorenzo Hart as he drifts almost like a ghost around this bar. The film is utterly intoxicating in its simplicity, in its performances, its script, its wonderful piano backdrop. It's poetic, it's delusional, but it yearns for so much. It's witty and filled with so many different sentiments. Hart wears his heart on his sleeve for 90 minutes here. I think there is a chance that this could grate on some audiences, but it's the kind of filmmaking that I love, especially from this duo. I was grinning ear to ear for the whole runtime of this. It's one of my absolute favorites of the festival. It's bittersweet with a slow, numbing pain behind it all. And this has just this week come out in the UK, so please do go and watch it. Die My Love is Lynn Ramsey's latest film starring Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson, and this one is primal, abrasive, and it lacks a true moment of equilibrium. Well, for me it did anyway. The ground is constantly shifting here. It's uncomfortable, unsettling. It meanders through the forest in search of something that it never really finds. Jennifer Lawrence's performance carries this film far beyond its plot, and her dedication to the role is what makes it so compelling, but the film does get lost at times. It's about a new mother that struggles with motherhood. And I think its blurred lines and editing work exactly as intended, but that doesn't always mean it's an easy watch or necessarily easy to follow. I was never frustrated, but I wasn't always captivated. I was initially quite struck by it, but it has grown colder in my mind since I first saw it, especially when compared to Lynne Ramsay's other work. There is a bit of a repeat of themes in here compared to her other work too, but the cinematography is just as good here, and the sound design really adds to the madness. I still think this is definitely worth a watch. And on my final day to close out the festival, I saw two films, the first of which was The History of Sound, which is the story of two men who fall in love whilst on a journey to record and archive music. And unfortunately, I don't think either aspects that this film attempts to explore are done particularly well. The music side of things is so interesting, but the film never fully commits to spending enough time on it, and the romance is fine. The whole endeavor is just a bit sedated here for me. Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor are great, and the chemistry is there, but it never fully combusts. Occasionally, the film delivers these wonderful moments of musical beauty that showed me this film is capable of so much more than what we got. Sure, it's delicate, but it's not always interesting. That's my main problem with this film. Just because you have a delicate approach to certain scenes does not mean the tender emotion is always there. I think it's ultimately fine, and maybe it was final day fatigue, but this left my brain a little quicker than I was expecting. And finally, I saw 100 Nights of Hero, which is this sort of fantasy romance, not really what I was expecting actually, even though the title actually makes it pretty clear it's about 100 nights of wooing someone. It's a modern Princess Bride, but it's not on the same level as the Princess Bride, let's be clear here. One thing that is clear is Emma Corrin pretty much steals every scene they are in here. They are absolutely enchanting in this. The film has a great feeling of sentimental whimsy, but it's also a bit underwhelming, and its structure means it kind of goes around in circles. And I don't really have much more to say. There are momentary sparks of magic, mainly thanks to the chemistry between Emma Corrin and Micah Monroe, but otherwise it leans a bit too much into parody for me, I think. So a slightly disappointing final day, but that's everything I saw at the London Film Festival. I highly encourage anyone to attend the festival next year or to attend any kind of film festival because they are just wonderful celebrations of film. If you want to attend London, my best advice for you is to become a member of the BFI. It's not that expensive and it gives you member access to tickets before the general on sale. And then during the festival itself, extra tickets are released at 10 a.m. every morning. And I managed to get a couple of additional films in because of this. It's a very easy festival to attend, and the atmosphere and the venues are just wonderful. It's an amazing way to experience film. And you do end up watching a lot of films you perhaps wouldn't normally go and see. That's the line you always hear, but it rings true every time. I'm sure you are, but I'm sick of my own voice at this point, so if you made it this far into the video, I really do appreciate it. Please do consider subscribing, check me out over on Letterboxd. But all that's left to do now is to thank you very much for watching.